One person that's leaving Fox to come back in the NFL and coach is Sean Payton, your boy. Now, let's talk about it right now. Can Sean Payton save the Broncos? Can he save them, Zay? Can he?
Absolutely. I think Sean Payne is a mastermind at coach, at head coach. The last time he's seen him, he's coached the hell out of quarterbacks that didn't deserve to start at one particular time. He coached Tony Bridge, he coached Jameis Winston, two guys that looked phenomenal under his tutelage, under his regime as coach. I think even coaching Drew Brees, who couldn't throw a tight window from 20 yards out. So that's something that Sean Payne had to deal with his entire career. When you look at Russell Wilson. He's declining. You could say he's declining as a quarterback, or he had poor play calling. You go either way, but Sean Payne's to find a way to work with Russell Wilson and that group, and do dividends, pay dividends for that offense. I think offense is where you really want to focus at when you're Sean Payton, because the defense is already packaged, it's already ready to go. It's a young defense. It's stout. It's strong. Even when he got rid of Chubb, and they lost a few guys on defense due to injury, they were still playing outstanding, lights out. So the main focus is you want to focus on the offense, making sure they can push the ball down the field, get some field goals, put any type of points on the board to relieve the defense. They want to make sure the offense is on the field as long as possible so the defense can be as effective as possible throughout the entirety of the game. And I think Sean Payton is that guy to do that. I think he'll revamp Russell Wilson's game into a better product than what we saw last year. I know everyone, after what we just saw, everyone's calling Russell Wilson the child of Pete Carroll. But I think we could definitely see a different, better version of Russell Wilson under Sean Payton. I think he does save the Broncos.
Yeah, so for me, here's the thing, right? From like the middle point of the season and on, when it was really clear, like, okay, the Broncos are going to need a new head coach, I always thought Sean Payton would be the guy they got, due to the fact that if you're the Broncos, like, your ownership group has a ton of money. They just bought the team last year. They own Walmart. Like, money is not a problem for them. They have no problem spending, especially after everything that just happened with Nathaniel Hackett. And if you would have just told me, right, a couple days after the season, the Broncos just throw a bag at Sean Payton and he takes the job, like, that's kind of how I thought it was going to play out. But it was much more complicated than that. And I'll start off by saying this, right? You guys remember, like, I'm trying to think of the last time this high profile of a coach was available for a new gig that everyone wanted him. Like, the entire talk of the coaching cycle was about him. And I thought about John Gruden, right? Like, for all of those years he was available as a head coach, we all knew, like, okay, he was interested, but you never heard any rumblings from Ian Rappaport or Adam Schefter about, like, teams that would be interested in him. And the thing that always, like, confused me a little bit about Sean Payton the last couple weeks and months was that, like, he was openly talking to Adam Schefter about, like, what he values in a job. He was talking to Colin Cowherd on his show about, like, the pros and cons of each job that would possibly take him. And I'm just wondering, like, when you combine that and the fact that, for all we know, like, Sean Payton was not the Broncos' number one choice. Like, they wanted D'Amico Ryans. Like, that was their guy. They even flew out to Michigan to talk to Jim Harbaugh after Harbaugh announced that he was not going anywhere. So I'm not going to lie to you guys. Like, on Monday, when we really first started getting word that, okay, it's looking like D'Amico Ryans is going to be the next head coach of the Houston Texans, I thought for a second that Sean Payton might not be an option for Denver because no one wants the job and Russell Wilson's toxicity is just this bad. I thought that was going to be the case because it looked like the Broncos themselves didn't even know who they wanted to hire, and this came together at the last second. So I'm not shocked that this ultimately ended up happening, but there's some red flags here. Like, I know the Broncos have a ton of money and they just threw it at him, and that's probably the reason why, like, he just took the job. But, like, for all we know, like, I don't know if Sean Payton wants to coach Russell Wilson, and that's why I'm a little bit surprised right now, especially considering, like, the Chargers, the Cowboys, the Bills. These are all jobs that could open next year. And for the record, I think Sean Payton can save the Broncos, right? I've been on record of saying, and I still believe this, that I don't think this situation is as bad as it seems. I don't think Russell Wilson was as bad or is as bad of a player as he was last year. I think Sean Payton could definitely get more out of him. But when you look at this Broncos situation, like, I'm just not 100% sure with the way this all came together, if it's going to work, especially when you consider, the division they're in, the AFC conference, it's loaded. I'll also have a little bit more of a firm opinion once we know for sure. Like, who his offensive coordinator is, who his defensive coordinator is, who his GM is going to be over there in Denver. But like, this feels to me, this all came together at the last second. And I don't even know if both sides are 100% bought in, which is crazy to say when the Broncos just gave this guy $20 million.
You know, upon thinking about this last night and think things thoroughly, which I did, this is not a great fit at all. No, to answer the question, Sean Payton cannot save the Broncos because the Broncos are unfixable. That's the difference. This is not a slight at Sean Payton. I called him a top 3 coach in the NFL. I remember days back up in college, senior year, me and Zach is debating Andy Reid or Sean Payton, who's the better coach. Those days, right? That's how highly I regard Sean Payton. But you cannot fix something that can't be fixed. When I look at the picks that they've given up, the team, and when I look at Russell Wilson, who was 35, no, he's 35 or 30, yeah, 35. He's not going to get any better. He's not. Like, he's at the tail end of his career. Can he be better than last year? Sure. But the better version of Russell Wilson? Hell no. He's at the tail end. So you're dealing with that. But also, you gave up a 2023 first round pick, 2024 second round pick for a guy who's retired. So, or was retired. So the Saints won the trade. Let me be clear here. You done got 2 picks. One that could become even more valuable if the Broncos finish where they did last year. And you got it for a guy who was retired. You stole that trade, bro. The Saints won this trade. Especially when you think about the first round pick they lost with the Eagles. They won this trade automatically. But when we focus and keen in on the Broncos, no, I'm sorry. Look, keep in mind here. Zach, you said it. They were not his first option. They were his third option. Jim Harbaugh, DeMeco Ryan were the first 2 options. And you paid a steep price like that? You trade for a guy that's your third option? And you mean to tell me they won the trade and that's something they feel good about? No. Red flags. Sean Payton, didn't you retire from one terrible spot? Like, yeah, the Saints were good when they were good. They were, a team that was always competing for a championship. But you left out of there. You didn't leave there because you was tired of the game. No. Them fake puppy dog tears at your retirement presser was just, listen, I want out. I want to go somewhere else. I don't want to deal with this. This team is in salary cap hell. Michael Thomas still ain't played yet. He's still in the FBI witness protection program. Drew Brees is retired. No stability at quarterback. Imbalanced roster. But you go to this team with a quarterback that looked shot last year, who's 35 years old, okay, whose latter years are here, like literally his latter years are here, not his prime years. Then you talk about, these wide receivers. They're okay. They just guys. Jerry Jeudy, when has he eclipsed 1,000 yards? Okay, I'm Cortland Sutton. Come on. So you left one terrible situation to go to a bad situation. Like, no, I think Sean Payton went here because he didn't really have the market we thought he had. Right? The Chargers wasn't going to come calling with Justin Herbert. They didn't do it. The Cowboys, they just gave Mike McCarthy a raise pretty much. So where was his option? Just sit back in the boot, wait another year? No, he had to go to the Broncos. The Broncos had to hire him. And when you have to form a relationship that's not warranted, where it's like, all right, I got you, you got me, let's do it. That's not set up for success, Lil Shadamas.
So everything you said with the priority thing, I agree with. And I think they really did want DeMeco Ryans and or Jim Harbaugh over Sean Payton. But I'm trying to figure out why. Like, we've literally spent all offseason talking about this guy and where he's going to go. If from the Broncos perspective, this was always going to be the guy we all thought they were going to go after. And the one thing that stood out to me, I'm curious what you guys think about this, but Sean Payton, there were 5 teams with looking for a new head coach, right? He interviewed with 4 of them and didn't get a second interview with any of them. Like, that was a little weird to me. And I'm thinking, like, is it just because he's a bad interviewer? Like, I agree. There really wasn't much of a market for this guy. And I'm trying to figure out why. Like, he's a very good head coach. And like, I also have some thoughts about like where he ranks and like everything he's done in New Orleans. I obviously think he's a very good head coach and he's going to do like, he's a massive upgrade over Nathaniel Hackett, of course. And I do think this was a move that the Broncos had to make, but we've never seen this guy win without Drew Brees. And it's interesting because I just want to see him with another quarterback. And if he's as good, like as everyone tells me he is, like he should at least improve the situation because Russell Wilson was bad last year, no doubt about it. And I think a lot of it just had to do with him and his actions. But you give him a real head coach like Sean Payton, like Russell Wilson has always been a number 2 guy. And Sean Payton is not going to deal with his antics. And that defense was a top 5 elite defense last year. And I know the weapons aren't elite, but they're still pretty good. You should be able, with a quarterback like Russell Wilson, to have some success. So if Sean Payton is this elite coach that the media and everyone tried to tell me, and he's obviously a very good coach, like I think there is enough here to at least dramatically improve the situation.
I just think that the Broncos want a young mind. They want one of these young innovators, whether it's defensively, offensively. Clear they were chasing defensive guys. Jim Harbaugh is a defensive guy. D'Amico Ryan is a defensive guy. So maybe that's the side they want to go on. But when you look at the broader scale with all the teams that potentially could have used Sean Payton services, yeah, it's very alarming. But like I said before, I don't think paying top dollar for your third option is a smart move because clearly if he wasn't your first and second, then there's something wrong there. Why wasn't he your first and second? And why are you paying top dollar for your third option? That doesn't make no sense to me. Now, another thing here, and Zay, if you want to respond to that, by all means. I understand that Sean Payton is a Hall of Famer, top 5 coach when he was coaching. He coached, Drew Brees. They won a Super Bowl together. But we have to remember, the Saints, they had a stranglehold on the NFC South. They won it 4 straight years, 2017 to 2020. Okay. And I believe they were 19-5 in that span against NFC South rivals, division partners, division foes, right? 19-5. Now he goes to the AFC West, okay, where you have the Chiefs who's playing in the Super Bowl, a team that won the last 6 conference titles, a team that Patrick Mahomes is undefeated, I believe 14-0 on the road against all these clowns. And you mean to tell me we expect them to have success? Maybe we expect improvements. Sure, I'll give you the improvements. But the last time I checked, unless the Raiders, they trade for Aaron Rodgers, like Zay is saying, maybe they're the last team. But the Broncos is right there to be last. And if they don't get at Aaron Rodgers, the Raiders, then Russell Wilson is the worst quarterback in this division because I'm definitely taking Justin Herbert over him. I'm damn sure taking Patrick Mahomes over him, okay? And the only person I'm not taking over him is Jarrett Stidham. So, yeah, Sean Payton, it's going to be a very tall task to say he's going to have success like he did in New Orleans with this Broncos team. I don't see it.
I just want to comment on like the coaching decision to go after him. Like third option. You're right. It is a steep price to pay for your third option, but that's what desperation gets you. When Jim Harbaugh and D'Amico Ryan's 2 coaches, one you thought wanted to go back to NFL, and the other you thought was itching for a coaching job. You think you would they would want to take those jobs in Denver, but you were wrong. D'Amico Ryan's wanted to go to Texans, even though he sued them. He wanted to go over there to Houston, and then Jim Harbaugh didn't want to leave college. So at that point, do you have to look inward? Like, all right, what do other people look at our team, and how do we see our team? So if Sean Payton desperately wanted to coach, or he really wanted to lock in on being on the Broncos head coach, then you have to pay him top dollar because at any other point, you had no other options. You don't know who was going to be after that. Like, who do you go after? Do you go after an OC? Do you go after another defensive coordinator and try to prime away with another top dollar offer that he possibly can't refuse? So it was a situation where the Broncos had no other choice but to go after Sean Payton, a highly decorated coach, a guy who has a lot of accolades in the league. And hopefully you're hoping he brings some type of superiority into this organization and he changes them around. I personally think he will, but we have to see until that moment comes.
One last point for me. It's a major problem when you're paying a coach $20 million a year. You're giving up first-round picks for him after you gave up multiple first-round picks to get your quarterback. Like, if you're investing this much in a new head coach and you're not even confident that he could fix it, like, that's an issue. And it really is a good explanation of the Broncos and what they've been the last few years. And one last point, like, they hired this GM, George Patton, to make draft picks. Like, that was really what he was known for, is hitting on draft picks when he was an assistant in Minnesota, I believe. And now the Broncos don't have any draft picks because they're all invested in their coach and quarterback.
And my last point here, and this is really my last point, Zay, I'll pass it over to you if you have any last responses. But I think for me, Russell Wilson just looks shot to me, like he does. And I saw it the last year. I'm not even talking about last year. I saw it the last year in Seattle. That same system that we are seeing Geno Smith flourish in, I saw it 2 years ago, his last year on that team, and I was not impressed at all. And even the year before, when we gave him the MVP in week 5, and Pete Carroll was listening to everybody saying, let him cook, he let him cook. And guess what? He burnt the food, throwing interceptions, right? I don't know what it is with Russell Wilson. Is it the injuries that stockpiled that's affecting him now? Is it overtraining? Because he seems like a guy that's doing extra. Like if you're doing high knees on a plane for 4 straight hours, you're overtraining, bro.
I think it was
if you're
more
that
than that.
dramatic, you're overtraining. Exactly. So I don't know, something about me with him that he's off, and Sean Payton's gonna have to have his hands full, believe it or not.